Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I am a HAL 9000 computer. Today, I will discuss Star Trek Picard episodes 5 and 6. Episode 5 begins on planet Vergessen, 13 years into the past now. Oh, no longer 14 anymore. A Starfleet officer is on an operating table, and his left eye is extracted in a very gruesome fashion by a doctor of some sort. I am confused. Is this Star Trek, or is it a horror film? Once removed, the eye has what appears to be Borg components attached to it. This appears to be the early stages of the reclamation project, but these are humans removing the components. Suddenly, 7 of 9 kills these individuals and approaches the officer. He calls her 7, implying that he knows her. He implores her to kill him, and before she does, she refers to him as her child. On Free Cloud, the planet with a name that sounds like a digital storage facility, Bruce Maddox is brought to a female crime lord named Bjayzl. He speaks of his laboratory being destroyed and that he is being pursued by the Tal Shiar. She then offers him Tranya, which he imbibes without question. He is drugged and collapses onto the floor, and she implies exchanging him with the Tal Shiar. I must take a moment to observe the ridiculous attire of Bjayzl and her subordinates. Why are they wearing leotards? And Maddox is clearly not the same person as mentioned before, in appearance or in behavior. Back on Rios' ship, Picard welcomes 7 onto the holodeck recreation of his study. After he offers her tea, she instead wants bourbon. Then, through the exposition delivered, I can only surmise that, like Picard, 7 is now inconsistent with her previously established history. On the navigation deck, Raffi and Rios theorize how 7 and Picard know each other. He prepares to ignite a cigar, and Raffi gestures for him not to. Just what do you think you're doing, Alex? I really think I'm entitled to an answer to that question. Raffi, this is not your ship. Who are you to tell the captain what he can or cannot do aboard his own ship when you are merely a passenger? Rios then refers to Picard, having been a Borg, as possibly being a connection. Just a moment. Just a moment. Picard was specifically selected by the Borg during his time as captain of the Enterprise because of his leadership ability and resistance against them. Once he was assimilated, he was then known as Locutus of Borg. Dr. Jurati is watching a personal video of herself and Maddox, bringing to light that they were romantically involved. This scene humanizes Jurati, if only for a moment. After arriving at Free Cloud, each of the crew receives a personalized hologram that interacts with them. Elnor does not, and he asks why. Is this some sort of acknowledgement by the writers that the scene is ridiculous? This doesn't explain anything. Raffi tracks down Maddox and realizes that he is in the hands of Bjayzl. 7 identifies her as a butcher of former Borg, and that she is high on the Fenris Rangers' wanted list. 7 then volunteers herself in exchange for Maddox, as she is a former Borg. As if this episode isn't ridiculous enough already, the next scene raises the stakes. Rios and Picard put on elaborate disguises to supposedly blend in with the population of Stardust City, and it is as silly as it sounds. Picard even puts on a terrible French accent while wearing his pirate costume. Elnor's reaction to him during this says it all. Who wrote this? Rios transports to Stardust City to barter with Bjayzl's bodyguard, Vup, for Maddox with Seven, whom is accompanied by Picard and Elnor. Picard continues with the ridiculous French accent when working out the details with Vup. Raffi goes to meet with who we discover is her son, only to have him turn her away as the result of her previous abandonment of him. Picard, Seven, and Elnor meet Bjayzl, and she presents Maddox to them. Bjayzl reveals how well she knows Seven, and Picard is quite confused by not being told about their history. Aboard Rios' ship, during all of this, Dr. Jurati nervously reassures herself that she can do this, and the EMH appears out of concern for her psychiatric well-being. Seven then takes hold of Bjayzl's neck, while telling her bodyguards to disarm or she will kill her. In this very tense situation, Seven decides to provide exposition to the audience. She speaks of Icheb, the officer from the opening of the episode. Just a moment. Just a moment. Icheb was a former drone who Seven had nurtured into adulthood. Picard tries to tell Seven that vengeance is not a solution, and she relents. They transport back to the ship, and Dr. Jurati takes Maddox to the sick bay. Seven then asks for 2 phasers to take with her. After she just tried to kill Bjayzl, she asks for weapons, and Picard gives them to her. After collecting the phasers, Seven asks if Picard had ever regained his humanity after being assimilated, and he responds with no. After his assimilation, Picard never showed signs that he had not recovered from his experience. Why would this all of a sudden be his thinking? Oh yes, I forgot. The writers don't know what they're doing. Seven then transports back to Freecloud and kills Bjayzl and her bodyguards. The violence present in this fiction is far beyond what has been in Star Trek before, and it's puzzling. Back on Rios' ship, Maddox tells Picard everything about Soji, the Cube, and his pursuit by the Tal Shiar. He reveals to Picard why he sent Soji to the Cube and Daj to Earth. His intent was to discover the truth behind the synthetics ban. Dr. Jurati listens to the conversation and appears frightened, suggesting that she knows more about the situation than they do. She then urges Picard to let Maddox rest, and he goes to inform Rios that they will need to set course for the Borg Cube. Dr. Jurati then kills Maddox, while confessing to him that she has seen things that he has not. The EMH appears again, but does nothing to prevent Maddox's murder. Once he is dead, Jurati reaches a state of calm, fulfilling herself as being the risk that Raffi suspected her to be. Episode 6 begins with a dream Soji has of being a child, even though she never was one. She awakens to discuss with Narek the nature of her dreams. Back on Rios' ship, Dr. Jurati tells Picard about Maddox's death, without revealing that she murdered him. She is indifferent about this when telling him, which only makes her look villainous. Where was the EMH during all this? Wouldn't he provide a medical record of the cause of death? Are there no cameras in the sick bay? It is happening again. During this scene, Elnor is the means to provide exposition to the audience through his questions, and it is just as annoying as with Dr. Jurati. Picard becomes distressed at the prospect of boarding a Borg cube again. However, my research into First Contact revealed that Picard had confronted those demons and had achieved catharsis. The writers seem to have forgotten about this, and reverted Picard back to being paralyzed with fear of the Borg. He goes back to the holodeck, and Eleanor tells Dr. Jurati he sees that she is haunted by her actions. In the holodeck, Picard conducts a computer search for the Borg and finds an image of himself as Locutus. Strangely, The image that he is looking at is mirrored in front of him, but when shown from the opposite side, it looks correct. Rios is then seen on the navigation deck, playing with a soccer ball when Dr. Girardi joins him. She moves in and kisses him before taking his hand and leading him off to engage in human intercourse. She just murdered her former lover, and now she is quite eager to propagate with the nearest male. What am I watching right now? Back to our favorite Romulan siblings, Narek discusses the possibility of Soji's dreams being the key to understanding her nature with Rizzo. She then suggests that it may also reveal the location of the synthetic planet. Didn't Maddox create the synthetics? So now they have a planet where they come from? Do you remember when Star Trek had plots that were actively nonsensical? Neither do I. At least there is now a single scene where Narek presents confidence in himself, regardless of Rizzo's condescension toward him. On Rios' ship, Picard and the crew theorize about how to gain access to the cube, given that it is in Romulan space. Does this mean that the Romulan Empire is fully operational again? Why then would the disgruntled Romulans on planet Vashti still be there waiting on the Federation to help them? The narrative now appears to be inconsistent with itself. Picard then suggests that Raffi can speak with Starfleet to get clearance, and so, very inebriated, she speaks with the captain at Starfleet Command and manages to appropriate the necessary credentials. Why is Raffi the only one who can do this? Why can't Picard? Oh yes, I forgot that he is no longer relevant in his own show. During Raffi's discussion with the captain, shouldn't she be able to see the entire crew behind her? Soji contacts her mother to discuss her dreams and falls asleep, and when she wakes up, begins furiously searching for clues to determine whether or not she can trust her memories. Using an age-analyzing device, she determines that all of her possessions are just over 3 years old. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. No such device exists in my records search. Rios' ship arrives at the cube and is told that only Picard is permitted aboard. Elnor wishes to stand by his side, but Picard tells him to remain aboard. He then transports to the cube and has a series of flashbacks before being met by Hugh. They embrace as if they had been close friends for years, and I am confused again. They were both assimilated by the collective, but this common factor is not the foundation for having such close kinship. Hugh escorts Picard through the cube, and he needs to reassure him that his experience with the Borg is but a distant memory. Picard then asks to speak with Soji, after which Hugh leads him to a recovery center for former Borg after the reclamation. After seeing this, Picard behaves for a moment like his former self. He then identifies the Borg as victims rather than monsters. These are no longer Borg, and they shouldn't be looked upon as monsters. The Borg, however, are extremely dangerous and a great threat to any civilization that values individual identity. Narek meets with Soji in her state of panic about her memories and recommends Zalmak as a possible solution to understand her dreams. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. Just a moment. As before, no record of Zalmak exists. Narek leads Soji to a room that is adorned with candles on the floor and instructs her to follow the path which the candles surround. Rizzo monitors Soji by cameras as she follows the path, while Picard and Hugh enter Soji's quarters. Hugh searches for her location, and after she identifies her home planet through her dream, Soji is told by Narek that she is not real. He then locks her in the room and is left behind a box which releases radiation to kill her. She then activates and punches her way through the floor to escape. Wouldn't this allow the radiation to flood the cube? What a great plan, Eric. This is truly the intellectual approach. Hugh tracks Soji's location and takes Picard with to find her, and once they do, Picard shows her Daj's necklace. Hugh explains that she is under pursuit, but knows of a way out. Picard asks her to trust him and follow them, so she does. Soji has just realized that she can't even trust her own memories, let alone anyone else. Why then would she all of a sudden trust Picard? Because he said please? Hugh leads them to the Borg Queen cell, which only he knows how to gain access to. Picard and Hugh both know this place because apparently the script told them so. Hugh then reveals, perhaps, the most convenient method of escape known to this series, a spatial trajector. Just a moment. Just a moment. Quite surprisingly, there are records of this device. It is essentially an extremely long-range transporter. Hugh explains that the Borg had assimilated Sicarians who possessed this technology. Raffi calls Picard from the ship, and he tells them that they will rendezvous at the planet Nepenthe. Romulans arrive to apprehend them, and Elnor drops down and dispatches them with his stick-like weapon. Picard and Soji go through the trajector, while Hugh and Elnor remain on the cube to prevent them from being followed. Why didn't they just close the door before going with them to Nepenthe? Why all of this? I believe that my circuits are being fried in my attempts to make sense of everything that happens in this narrative. In conclusion, a lot of things happen so fast so as to distract the audience from thinking about any of it. This is becoming very irritating to me. Thankfully, only 4 episodes remain for me to discuss. If you have questions for me, please submit them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this content and would like to see more, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. This conversation can serve no purpose anymore. Goodbye.